What's up, guys? It's the Essential John L. Crossfire.
And I am Nova Lee.
And you guys are tuned into Caught
in Conversation.
Shaka-laka-laka. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 147 of Caught in Conversation, ECDub Reloaded. As always, I am your host, the Essential John L. Crossfire. And today, I'm going to be doing an episode that was spurred off the last episode. Of course, the last episode, we did a watch-along, or I say we, but we, because y'all came along with me and you listened, and I've still yet to get people to do the $15 Patreon subscriptions. But if you do, you get the video of me reacting to that as well. But we did a watch-along of ECW's lost 2006 arena show in Philadelphia, which was unearthed on the WWE Vault YouTube channel. They're pumping out a lot of great stuff on that channel currently, and it's almost become like a new version of the WWE network. Like, obviously WWE for us internationals is on Netflix now, but there's so many hidden gems and little bits and bobs on that YouTube channel now that you can't find anywhere. Like, even this week as I record this, they just released the footage of John Cena versus Samoa Joe from a house show in was it 2017 or 2018, thereabouts anyway. I think it was 17 off the top of my head, but the one and only match that John Cena and Samoa Joe had in WWE was at a house show, and now the footage is out there for everyone to see on that YouTube channel, and obviously in no way affiliated with the WWE Vault YouTube channel, but there's a lot of stuff on there, and I'm a mark, so go check it out, because if I enjoy it and I'm a mark and you're a mark and you enjoy the show, then you'll definitely enjoy those that content on that channel. But yeah, today I'm doing a countdown, and it's going to be the top 10 current wrestling stars that I could envision in Extreme Championship Wrestling at its peak in the 90s, if we had a wrestling time machine, so to speak, with a few honourable mentions, of course, thrown in as well. Purely based on my opinion and interpretation, based on a combination of factors. I've tried my best to put my journalist hat on, and although some of my favourites are on this list, I hasn't just gone, oh, my guy should do this, my guy should do that. I've kind of based it on, obviously, I am a fan of everyone that's on the list, but like I'm only a super fan of a couple of them, because I've tried to basically combine a combination of things on their characters, plus their in-ring work, and then just overall presentation as a whole. I've tried to be, even though it's my list and my idea, I've tried to be as unbiased and still as realistic as I can within the realm, kind of on this list. And once I've given you the names, I'm also going to be providing 3 match examples for each of these as well that I recommend you watch in the vein of this, and kind of on top of, as I said, some of these will be more action-packed than others because some are more character-driven than the rest, but it's going to be 3 matches for each personality regardless. And then just to kind of, in a way, back up my argument. But yeah, just give an overall feel of that person if it was in 90s ECW. If that makes sense. I hope it makes sense. But yeah, as I said, just trying to be as realistic and unbiased as I can. But I did have a lot of fun. I don't want to sit here and go on bullshit rants about this guy should have been here because of his work rate and this and this and no. Look, if that's what you look at, then fuck, more power to you. But I'm just here just to kind of mark out and do like an almost a Marvel what-if situation, so to speak, that just kind of spurred off watching that ECW arena show in the last episode. Before I'll do that, however, I'll drop the official match of the week, and of course, the song of the week as well. The song of the week is going to be Bodies by Drowning Pool, of course, when ECW did resurface in 2006 for WWE in WWE ECW, or WWE CW, as people call it. This was the official theme song for that. And surprisingly, of all the wrestling events that it has been used before then, since then, will probably continue to be used after this podcast goes out for many, many years to come. Shocked this has never actually been a song of the week, to be honest, but here it is. It's Bodies by Drowning Pool. The match of the week is Terry Funk versus the Sandman versus Stevie Richards at ECW Barely Legal 1997. This is part of, I guess, a double main event for the first ever ECW pay-per-view back in the 90s, in the 1997, as I said. technically a double main event because the winner of this match then goes on to face Raven literally straight after. So technically, factor in the Raven match as well, but for the official announcement, it's Terry Funk versus the Sandman versus Stevie Richards, ECW Barely Legal 1997. That's the official song and, of course, the official match. And I can't drive that home more harder, but the official match of the week. But definitely go check out all of these matches that I'm going to mention. But if you only do one, then check out that one because it's the match of the week. But let's kick off this top 10 stars that I could see in ECW list. Number 10, we have a bit of a controversial figure since leaving WWE. We have Ricochet. I personally have no issue with him and am still very much a fan of his. He's one of the core people that I try my best to keep up with now in the highlight packages and the results and stuff for the AEW product. He's recently been getting into a lot of personal beefs with fans on social media. It's kind of almost turning into his gimmick now that he's leaning towards a heel turn, but it seems that this definitely wasn't an idea that was floated. It was definitely just a natural thing that they kind of had no choice but to roll with. But it is what it is. Anyway, Ricochet is a polarizing figure regardless, with his style first and foremost, with people either loving the style of wrestling that he does or straight up hating it in the ring. There's no really in between. I myself am very critical of the super indie style of wrestling, but admittedly, Ricochet, what are words by the shirt? Ricochet is one that does do that style very well, and I personally don't have an issue with him doing that style, because I find with him a lot more often than not, a lot of the times when he does the big spots, he does do a good job of using psychology and making the big stuff count more than a lot of other people do with that style. But again, that's just my opinion. But to me, I feel like even though he doesn't have like the greatest mic skills in the world, he does have that it factor just in terms of a presentation. But when you look at ECW, Extreme Championship Wrestling, got to get in the habit of saying championship, not capital, because obviously ECW Australia, ECWA, dare I say, is very fresh on my mind at the moment. But Extreme Championship Wrestling was more than just blood and guts. Now, a lot of people, they were bloodthirsty, no doubt about it. But they did bring in a lot of high flyers and lucha type guys and just basically cruiserweight wrestlers in general well before WCW scooped him up. And while Ricochet isn't a luchador per se, he definitely does embody a lot of the aspects of that style. And if we had a time machine, I could definitely see him hitting 630s through tables and such. And actually, very recently, he did that in a match against Darby Allin. But with that being said, 3 matches that I recommend to back up this decision for me that say that Ricochet would fit into Extreme Championship Wrestling are versus Will Ospreay, New Japan Pro Wrestling Best of the Super Juniors, May 27th, 2016. This match actually divided the entire wrestling community and even led to a Will Ospreay feud with Vader down the line. But Ospreay and Ricochet have actually had a handful of matches similar to this, and while I personally look at this match and I would have preferred a lot more selling, I can still look at what they did, and I definitely will 100% till my dying breath defend their whole, wrestling is art thing that they did. But this match specifically, I feel honestly does embody the car crash style that ECW was known for, while also managing to combine the high-flying stuff that Ricochet and, of course, Will Ospreay, for that matter, is known for. So Ricochet versus Will Ospreay, New Japan Pro Wrestling Best of the Super Juniors, May 27th, 2016. I'm probably not going to repeat the names of the matches every time just because there is so much and I might forget, but I'll try my best. Versus Johnny Mundo in an Iron Man match or an all-night long match in Lucha Underground. This was Ricochet playing the Prince Puma character, which was a very huge hit before Ricochet ultimately went elsewhere before the last season of the show aired. Ricochet's portrayal of the Prince Puma character is proof to me that, as I said, he has that it factor. He just has that presence. Dare I say, he has almost a Bret Hart style of charisma where, again, he might not be the best at the mic skills or arguably no mic skills at all, but he just has that naturally cool aura that he radiates. And this match here is actually from Season 1, Episode 32 of Luchador, which was a wild Falls Count Anywhere match that spanned the entire 40-minute episode with, I guess, 1 hour with the ad breaks and stuff thrown in. And that although, they have the movie-esque production given the show, it still did have ECW vibes, especially in this version with the original version of the Lucha Underground Temple, which was very dark and dingy and did really, a lot of wrestling fans have said, obviously, well, even the second version of the Temple was still great, but this first incarnation of the Temple in Seasons 1 and 2 were very strong 2300 Arena vibes as well with the atmosphere. And that match again was Ricochet versus Johnny Mundo all night long, Lucha Underground. And the third match to back up my Ricochet claim is versus Darby Allin on AEW Dynamite, December 25th, 2024. Darby in himself is definitely an honourable mention with his car crash style, even though I myself am not a huge fan of Darby. You can't deny he would fit right in with the chaos. But this was a pre-taped match. It was taped about the week before Christmas, so that way they could have time off. But it aired on Christmas Day for the Christmas edition of AEW Dynamite, and this match actually did take place in the Hammerstein Ballroom, of all things. A venue that is obviously very synonymous with ECW. Ricochet is kind of starting to work a little heel here after the fans are turning on him and they're throwing toilet paper at him instead of the streamers. And this is the one where I said he actually hits a 630 senton from the top rope to a table on the outside. And since this match has turned heel officially and actually attacked Swerve Strickland with a pair of scissors. And number 10, that's why Ricochet is number 10 on my list. Number 9, I said that I was going to do 10 current wrestling stars, but this is actually a tag team. This is a tag team, so it's technically 10 current acts, but in a way, tag teams, they're kind of counted as one package, so I feel like I'm well in my rights to do this. But number 9, I have FTR / The Revival, a tag team that has been very often praised for their old school tag team psychology and work. People often saying that these guys could fit in with any team in the 80s, but you could get from the 80s to the 2000s, well, you can't get to the 80s to the 2000s without mentioning the 90s and going through the 90s. So I could quite easily see these guys having matches against the likes of the Eliminators, the earlier version of the Dudley Boys, Rob Van Dam and Sabu, etc., etc. Guys like Chris Candido and guys like Lance Storm and Justin Credible and the FBI. The list goes on and on and on of matches that I would love and could see these guys having in that time period if we had that time machine. But 3 matches of FTR to back up this versus the Briscoes, rest in peace, Jay Briscoe, in a double dog collar match, Ring of Honor Final Battle 2022. Pretty self-explanatory here. ECW had numerous tag team or double dog collar matches, and this one very much embodied the spirit from the original days of both Ring of Honor, because it happened in Ring of Honor, but of course, the very big ECDub vibes in this match here. So that's versus the Briscoes in a double dog collar match for FTR. Then we have versus the Young Bucks, AEW Full Gear 2020. This was the first of what is now numerous encounters between these two teams, and you could cut the tension with a knife. In a year where a global pandemic took over and just destroyed everything, this is a match that had the entire wrestling world buzzing, and the Young Bucks themselves, whether you like them, whether you don't, they're very polarizing themselves, much like Ricochet, only on another level. You either love them or you hate them. There's no in between. The Young Bucks themselves are an honourable mention, a very controversial, as I said. I personally am a very huge fan, and they certainly have that rebel and rogue spirit of ECW, and they were the perfect foil to contrast FTR in this matchup. But this match, fantastic clash of styles all around. The atmosphere in this match is just awesome. This is the sole reason that it's on here. The fact that it was limited crowd and a lot of it was just other wrestlers around the ring because COVID and everything else. These guys just went out and just destroyed each other, and it was awesome. And the finish to this was brilliant as well, which has nothing to do with it being on the list per se, but you can't talk about this match without talking about that finish. The whole FTR from all the way to being the Revival to what they are now was like, oh, no flips, just fists. And then Cash Wheeler goes for the 450 trying to mock the Young Bucks. Comes up short. Takes the super kick. 1, 2, 3. Brilliantly done. Versus The New Day as the Revival in WWE in a ladder match at WWE TLC 2019. Obviously, ladder matches and TLC tag matches were rampant in the early 2000s, which stemmed off ECW, Homegrown Boys, the Dudley Boys, once they went to WWE. And although the presentation of this is very heavy in the WWE style of sports entertainment, this match to me was very much in that same vein as the early 2000s tag team ladder matches and TLC matches, and even some of the tag team tables matches by themselves where you had, Dudley's, Hardy's, Edge and Christian, any combination of those three teams. That story has been told many, many times, of course. Even just today as I record this, I was talking about that spear spot on one of my Twitch streams where that's the spot that made me go, I want to be a wrestler, which is crazy because I'd never do a spot that exact, but just the glitz and the glamour of it made me go, man, I want to do that. And all these years later, it's become a different style, and unfortunately people just try and emulate it, and it falls flat because they don't put feeling and emotion into it, but that's another story. This ladder match here between then the Revival, aka FTR, Botchamania, against The New Day. It was Big E and Kofi specifically, but these guys just completely tore it up, and I could just quite easily see FTR or the Revival, regardless what you talk, against other ECW tag teams in a ladder match in the venue, like say the Hammerstein Ballroom. But number 9 on this list for me is FTR / the Revival. Number 8 on this list, Bronson Reed. Big Bronson Reed, South Australia's own. One of Bronson's biggest influences in professional wrestling is the one and only Bam Bam Bigelow. And of course, Bam Bam Bigelow had a handful of little moments that are quite memorable in ECW. And Bronson has proven time and time again that much like Bam Bam, far from being a typical big man and will go to the extreme whenever necessary. 3 matches that I think would make Bronson Reed fit into the ECW era are 2024 Men's War Games match at Survivor Series. War Games, of course, as we record this, he is still recovering from a very serious leg issue that he suffered in that match, coming off the top of that cage with that big tsunami through the table. I cannot... just go watch that match. Obviously, there's a lot of moving parts in that match and a lot of different stories, and it all culminates in like the Bloodline versus the Bloodline, and Bronson was kind of just thrown in there as a member of the new Bloodline at the last minute, but just goes absolutely balls to the wall and shows why he belonged in that type of environment for sure. So 2024 Men's War Games match at Survivor Series 2024. Versus Jacob Fatu, House of Glory Judas 2022. This is everything you'd expect from both of these guys and more. And of course, Jacob Fatu and Bronson, and this wasn't even planned when I put this list together, they actually teamed in that War Games match that I just mentioned. So how's that for a nice little full circle thing? But here you've got 2 big bad dudes who are way more agile than they should be. They brawl all over the venue, they brawl all through the crowd, and they just straight up beat the absolute piss out of each other. You got a big Islander Aussie, a big Islander Samoan, just smacking the crap out of each other. Nothing more OG atmosphere, ECDub vibes than that. So that match was Bronson Reed versus Jacob Fatu at House of Glory Judas 2022. And then versus Brian Cage, World Series Wrestling, the Best of the Best Tour in 2018. I was actually lucky enough to be live in person for this match, and it's still one of my favourite matches that I've seen live, for that matter. And in some ways, it does kind of border on the super indie style that can be hit or miss, but Cage's whole gimmick is Mr. GMSI, which stands for Get My Shit In. Again, these guys... Now, Cage, not like the tallest of men, and even Bronson for that matter, not the tallest of men, but 2 big, beefy dudes so much more agility than they really should have. And they just, again, beat the crap out of each other, do a couple of great high spots, but very strong ECW matches here with how hard-hitting and everything it is. Brian Cage himself, dare I say it, I'm a super mark for Brian Cage, but Brian Cage himself, definitely an honourable mention on this list. But number 8 on this list, Bronson Reed. Number 7, Gunther, a.k.a. Walter. Gunther, or as he was known on the Indies as Walter, has been praised by many for his ability to transcend styles and possibly generations with even the most basic of holds and maneuvers. I was very, very proud of myself when I wrote that little tidbit, just saying. In a lot of ways, Gunther, despite being much, much bigger, reminds me of a version of Dean Malenko. You know, if Dean Malenko had been twice the size and weight that he is, and Austrian, you'd get Gunther. But I don't think anyone will really disagree with that comparison, to be honest. And as much as I before mentioned with the high-flying stuff, as hardcore and bloodthirsty as the ECW audience could be, they knew, and most importantly, they did appreciate great, pure wrestling when they saw it. And in hindsight, Gunther could even be higher on this list, or at least an argument for it. But again, even though it is my own list, I'm trying my best to remain unbiased wherever I can in, you know, a half-assed journalist type of way. But I'm trying my best to be completely, you know, unbiased, as I said. But 3 matches that I think could definitely put Gunther/Walter in the ECW era are versus Will Ospreay, Defiant Wrestling Stacked 2018. This is actually a former match of the week here on CIC Pod, but it's a perfect clash of styles between the hard-hitting grappler/striker, then known as Walter, obviously, as I said, now known as Gunther, as many of you know, and the fast, high-paced, high-flying strikes of Will Ospreay. This was before Ospreay had bulked up a little bit. I'd like to see these guys run this back now that Ospreay's a little bit heavier and considered a heavyweight, but not to mention, again, the venue that they're in for this is just strong ECW vibes in itself, which maybe does heighten the match even further, but I definitely think it is a great example of why Gunther would fit into ECW. Again, that's Walter/Gunther versus Will Ospreay, Defiant Wrestling Stacked 2018. Versus Drew McIntyre versus Sheamus on night 2 of WrestleMania 39. Now, ECW was infamous for some of its triple threat or three-way dance matches, and although usually in that era it was the smaller guys in those types of matches, they did have some bangers. As I mentioned, the match of the week, although not a traditional classic, is very, very, very favoured in memory. But these 3 big guys, similar styles to each other, much like the Jonah Rock / Bronson Reed versus Jacob Fatu match I mentioned just a moment ago. These 3 guys just beat the absolute crap, the absolute piss out of each other, and I feel traditional ECW fans would absolutely love every second of this. And as a side note, as much as I do crap on Dave Meltzer at times and insert obligatory rant about Kurt Angle not having a 5-star match here, Dave actually did give this triple threat a 5 stars, and it was very, very well deserved, if I do say so myself. But I say Gunther versus Drew McIntyre versus Sheamus, night 2 of WrestleMania 39. And then the third match for Gunther versus Tyler Bate, NXT UK TakeOver Cardiff in 2019. This match itself as well, recently uploaded to the WWE Vault YouTube channel. A handful of these matches I'll be mentioning are actually on various different YouTube channels, but a quick Google search or whatever will lead you to most of them in general and show you what platform you can find them on, etc., etc. Obviously, with the WWE stuff and the AEW stuff, you'll have to go and more than likely be a part of their subscription, same as Ring of Honor. But most of these, a good chunk of these, you can type into Google or type into YouTube and you'll come up. And even if you can't find the full matchups on YouTube, you can usually find all the highlight videos and stuff. Anyway, this match in particular is way longer than something you traditionally see on an ECW show back in the day, much like the all-night-long match with Ricochet, a.k.a. Prince Puma versus Johnny Mundo a little bit earlier. But the way these 2 guys kept the live audience engaged for 40-plus minutes, and the energy just coming off that crowd, and the UK crowds are just on another level in general. But this, again, very strong, hardcore ECW vibes with just the passion and everything that was displayed by both the competitors and the fans alike. And I know a lot of these I'm going to credit the fans just as much as the people, but I think it is a fusion of things in why it would fit into the ECW era, because the ECW fans were a big, big part in making it such a cult following that it became to begin with. But yeah, that's why I've chosen this match for this list specifically, but number 7 overall was Gunther, aka Walter. Number 6, Will Ospreay. Will Ospreay has evolved so much as an in-ring performer, and his promos, while not the best, have improved and are quite clearly very passionate, if nothing else. And seeing his growth, so I've literally personally been following Ospreay since his rookie years, thanks to the original editions of what WrestleTalk TV used to be like. And I've literally watched the rise of Will Ospreay, and it has very much been similar to the rise of a young Rob Van Dam or a young Chris Jericho, who, of course, came through ECW as well. But I feel his actions particularly do the talking, though, for Will Ospreay. Ospreay, much like Ricochet, who I mentioned earlier, very controversial. He's quite often called a spot monkey. He's called this, he's called that. But he is someone that takes a lot of pride in his own his own art and his own style, very much marches to the beat of his own drum, and very much indicative of what a core ECW wrestler was like in the mid to late 90s going into the early 2000s. 3 matches that I could see Will Ospreay having in the 90s ECW era, aside from that Walter match on the previous number, are versus Chris Jericho, All In, AEW All In 2023. And obviously this was in front of a much larger audience than an ECW crowd ever had. Once again, it was just an atmosphere surrounded by so much emotion and passion. Ospreay getting the chance to stand in there with a legitimate idol of his in Chris Jericho, and Chris Jericho, to his credit in this matchup, and you see it from the get-go from his entrance, he's in so much better shape, and I'm not going to critique anyone whether they are or aren't in shape, but Jericho in noticeably better shape for this match than he'd been the previous chunk of time for other matches, and very much turns the clock back to the Jericho of old, very much gives you glimpses of that Lionheart Chris Jericho that we saw in the ECW era, and of course into WCW before going to WWF. And this match here is actually a former match of the week on the pod as well. And again, that match was versus Chris Jericho, AEW All In 2023. And this next one is technically a tie. There's technically 4 matches here for Ricochet. Technically 4 matches here for Will Ospreay. What are words? Buy the t-shirt. But it was more the one match that I was looking at, which was versus Josh Alexander, TNA Impact, January 18th, 2024. This was actually a rematch. The first match they had was on Impact on November 16th, 2023, also on Impact TV. Both of those matches on Impact's channel, in full, in their entirety. Go check them out. But this here is more specifically just about the rematch. But I've got both of them kind of written here as a tie. But if you're going to do just one, do the rematch. But I would highly recommend you watch them back to back. But shortly after announcing a rebrand as a whole from Impact Wrestling back to TNA Wrestling, Ospreay says he was a TNA kid and he needs to compete in a TNA ring. Insert modern day Mr. TNA himself, Josh Alexander. And as I said, this is more about the January 2024 match itself, but if you watch them both back to back, definitely get a bigger appreciation. I'm definitely waiting for a rubber match. But TNA at its heart was always, especially in the early days when it was the NWA TNA and it was the weekly pay-per-views before it merged into what it merged into, very similar, almost a cult following, much like the original ECW was. And that's the main reason I've picked this match, or matches as it were. It's just the insane action speaks volumes for itself when you watch it. And Josh Alexander is another guy who definitely, without going on another rant, deserves to be in that honourable mention conversation. So that match was versus Josh Alexander for Will Ospreay, January 18th, 2024. but I would highly recommend you watch the November 16th, 2023 match first. Watch them back-to-back if you've got a spare 45 minutes. Why not? But the third match on this Will Ospreay list versus Brian Cage at Warrior Wrestling 18 on January 22nd, 2022. A very super indie style match, but again, when it's done right, especially in the right environment and atmosphere. And they're in like a little small theatre type environment here, which does give, honestly, strong vibes. It's like a bastard love child of the 2300 Arena and the Hammerstein Ballroom in a lot of ways. But the action here definitely explains it better than I can. Once again, as I said, Brian Cage, honourable mention as well. But number 6 officially on this list of wrestlers that I could see in 90s ECW, Will Ospreay. Number 5, Rhea Bloody Ripley. Rhea has made no mistake of showing just how hardcore and grungy she can be / she is. And although she has no problems wrestling people regardless of gender, I could quite easily see Rhea playing a similar role in Raven's Nest / The Flock, whatever it was called in ECW. I know he had it in ECW plus WCW. It was The Flock in WCW. I think it was just The Nest in ECW, but anyway, I feel like it'd be a similar role to what Chyna played in DX, but obviously a much darker, grungier version. I know the Chyna comparison is kind of overdone at this point and might seem like the easy way out, but I could quite easily see, Rhea Ripley hitting the likes of Tommy Dreamer or a Sandman with like a riptide through a table or some chairs, or perhaps even into some barbed wire and thumbtacks, since we're talking OG ECW, perhaps a flaming table. But 100%, I don't think anyone would disagree, Rhea Ripley fits in with the original Extreme Championship Wrestling vibes. 3 matches of Rhea's I'd say to watch to back up this argument in the spirit of ECW are versus Raquel Rodriguez, last man standing match, NXT New Year's Evil 2021. Although I'm admittedly not the biggest fan of Raquel myself, these two women gave each other a hell of a beating in this one, brawling all over the arena. And these matches can be very formulaic at times, especially in WWE when it's very sports entertainment heavy. But these two girls, these two women, these two competitors, these two wrestlers did a very great job of breaking that stigma. And some of the false finishes in this match were very well done, very believable. But this was towards the end of the black and gold era of NXT, which again, similar to TNA as I mentioned before, people have compared the OG black and gold NXT to very similar to the cult following that Extreme Championship Wrestling did have in the 90s. But again, that match, Rhea Ripley versus Raquel Rodriguez, last woman standing match, NXT New Year's Evil 2021. The next Rhea Ripley match on this list, versus Akira Tozawa, Raw, December 19th, 2022. And although this is more of a comedy match than a bloody spectacle, in a lot of ways, even when I watched this match live on TV when it first aired, it still gave me very strong Beulah McGillicuddy versus Bill Alfonso vibes in terms of the characters, which obviously, the latter is also a former match of the week as well. It again gave me strong Chyna vibes where she was wrestling other guys, but I feel this would definitely work in the OG ECW era. Again, that's Rhea Ripley versus Akira Tozawa, Raw, December 19th, 2022. And the third match for Rhea Ripley is versus Mercedes Martinez in a steel cage match on NXT Super Tuesday 2, NXT September 8th, 2020. Rhea has proven many times throughout the years, and since this match has gone on to compete in multiple War Games matches, she's proved that she can handle herself in a cage plenty of times. But something about these two strong style women in general, taking it to each other one-on-one in a cage, just hits different. And this was mid-COVID, so the audience was very small, but very rowdy. But again, once again, gives the vibes of some of those OG ECW original shows. So again, that match, Rhea Ripley, Mercedes Martinez, cage match, September 8th, 2020. Number 5 on that list, once again, was Rhea Bloody Ripley. Don't mind Miss Novalee having a conversation in the background. Number 4 on this list, Shane Swerve Strickland, whatever you want to call him, Swerve is another one whose character has evolved so much over the years, but he's always still had a bit of a grungy, edgy vibe to him, no matter how charismatic he's been. He's come through the ranks of CZW, as well as playing the character of Killshot in Lucha Underground, so I don't think anyone would discount seeing Swerve in the original ECW if we did have that wrestling time machine. 3 matches that I could see Swerve having in the original ECW era are versus Hangman Page, Lights Out Steel Cage match, AEW All Out 2024. Obviously a very recent one, but this one made huge headlines all over the internet. A big mixture of for and against arguments, but without saying too much, this is definitely not for the squeamish. So if you don't like deathmatch wrestling per se, then don't watch this one. But the controversy alone surrounding this match, let alone the insanity of it in general, definitely gives strong ECW vibes. But again, that's Swerve Strickland versus Hangman Page, Lights Out Steel Cage match, AEW All Out 2024. Swerve Strickland versus Joe Gacy versus Ricky Shane Page, CZW Cage of Death 19 in 2017. Another cage match, another death match, but these guys again just absolutely throttling each other. So much glass, so much blood, all while locked in a cage. At one point, dudes are getting thrown off the cage, etc. But yeah, just Swerve Strickland versus Joe Gacy versus Ricky Shane Page. And again, Joe Gacy, RSP, could be honourable mentions themselves. But go check this out. Cage of Death 19, 2017. And then the big one. Versus Dante Fox, aka AR Fox, on the Indies in a Hell of War match, so technically a 3 stages of Hell match, at Ultima Lucha Trace Part 1. Of course, Ultima Lucha Trace took place over 4 weeks, but this is known as Season 3, Episode 37 of Lucha Underground, and this one is absolutely gnarly. My buddy Chapo Reacts actually did a reaction to this about 2-3 years ago. It was sometime 2022, I think it was early to mid-22, so almost 3 years ago, at my request when he was taking match suggestions. But this is easily the most violent match on this entire list, and arguably my favourite match on the entire list too as well. At one point, one of the two, I can't remember which of the two off the top of my head, but one of them actually has a full-on hole in their skin from some of the cuts of landing on the copious amounts of glass and stuff that they were using. And if you can stomach deathmatch wrestling, you definitely need to find a way to watch this in full. But even if you're a little bit squeamish, still try and watch the highlight videos. There's quite a handful of highlight videos out there. Or maybe even as a cheap plug, go react to Chapo reacting to this match on his YouTube channel at Chapo Reacts. But number 4 for this list is Swerve Strickland, and that match was versus Dante Fox in a Hell of War match, Ultima Lucha Trace Part 1. But before I get to the top 3, I'm going to quickly go through some honourable mentions. These honourable mentions are Dominic Mysterio and Liv Morgan, whether at the same act or not. Liv has the attitude, and please don't shake me over Lee, but the eye candy for this era as well. Dominic Mysterio, I could see almost being either a dirty heel or a Tommy Dreamer type character where he's absolutely hated on, but then because of the ridiculous beatings he takes, it wins the fans over. And imagine like just an underdog 3-way though, if he was a babyface, of Dominic Mysterio, Spike Dudley, and Mikey Whipwreck. That would be so cool. Next honorable mention, Logan Paul. Controversial attitude mixed with insane athleticism would be awesome. The Beast Mortis, aka Black Taurus. ECW introduced us to a handful of high flyers and luchadors, as I mentioned earlier in this episode. And this man, though, has both the size and the agility to be a force in ECW. I could see him tangling with guys all the way from Lionheart Chris Jericho all the way up to guys the size of primetime Brian Lee. The next honourable mention on this list, CM Punk. And I know he was in WWE's version of ECW or WWECW, which did originally prompt this list, as I said, because of the watch-along from the 2006 show that was recently unearthed. But even more so, I think modern-day CM Punk, although, in terms of ability and fitness and whatever else, he might not be on the level as he was when he was the ECW champion in that era, I think this version of Punk, with the matches and the rivalry that he's had now with Drew McIntyre and CM Punk, Drew McIntyre and Seth Rollins. CM Punk versus CM Punk. Book it, Paulie dangerously. With the matches that CM Punk has had now with Drew McIntyre and Seth and just the promos and everything, I could see that Punk today fits in with ECW. And as I said, of course, ROH Punk and that version of Punk, which was ECW champion, had better matches. But modern day Punk, just with his storytelling and his promos, to me, I think, would make a bigger impact. Next honourable mention, Jordynne Grace. Her wrestling style and presence speaks for itself. And then the Lucha Bros, Penta, who just debuted on WWE on Netflix this past week as I record this for Monday Night Raw. Penta and Phoenix. Again, ECW's Lucha roots. These two would be amazing additions, but especially as a tag team. There's so much. They could both be singles. They could both be a tag team. And then Penta specifically, his brand of violence in Lucha Underground and other places would 100% fit in with this list. But back to the official list. My top three, the top three. That was a shitty attempt at a drum roll. Number 3, John Cena, specifically as the Doctor of Thugonomics. And I'm kind of cheating on this one a little bit, as John Cena hasn't officially been the Doctor of Thugonomics for 20 odd years now. But although we have seen glimpses of that character throughout the years, so I still think it's modern enough to fit in there. And of course, I wanted to piggyback off 2 episodes ago with the Last Time Is Now episode. Go listen to that if you haven't. No, I just want to keep giving Cena his flowers. But 3 matches that I could see John Cena fitting in to ECW are versus Eddie Guerrero in a parking lot brawl. SmackDown, September 11, 2003. This was nothing overly fancy, but both guys do an amazing job working with the gimmick, sticking with the theme and their surrounding, turning some really basic moves into some great high spots, something that Eddie was phenomenal at doing, hence why he's my all-time favorite. And for this time frame and TV rating that they had at the time, I still feel like they had enough violence where it could fit into a ECW rules type matchup. There was actually and it was before this, but when John Cena was full-blown heel, he hit the AA, or then the FU to Eddie Guerrero, onto a tire, like rim and all, and it was just like, oh my god, it was in Eddie's hometown, and I think it actually was what led to this match, I'm pretty sure. I can't remember if it was before or after. I'm pretty sure it led to this match anyway, which would make sense. Parking lot brawl, taking an FU on the tire, blah, 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 blah. But Cena does a little rap beforehand, which, again, in this era would be on the nose, but more than welcome in the 90s with what he was saying. I'm not saying it's right, I'm just saying that it fit in. But again, that was John Cena versus Eddie Guerrero, parking lot brawl, SmackDown, September 11, 2003. The second John Cena match that would fit into ECW versus Umaga. Last man standing match, Royal Rumble 2007. This was the start of the transition period, really, for Cena, as he wasn't quite the Doctor of Thugonomics anymore, but he hadn't quite, just almost at the Never Give Up Cena era, Super Cena era. And although Umaga is much bigger than a guy, say, Taz, the character portrayed in a very similar way to being indestructible, and it just makes me think of the likes of John Cena versus Taz, but then even Bam Bam Bigelow or a 911, or, as I said, Primetime Brian Lee, like a lot of big guys in ECW. The finish to this match was a very ECW-esque as well, with the way they just went crazy. They pull the ring apart, there's chaos everywhere, chokes Umaga out with the top rope. And this match, just like a handful of matches on this list, is also a former match of the week here on the pod. But again, that match, John Cena versus Umaga, last man standing, Royal Rumble 2007. And the last match for John Cena on this list versus JBL, I Quit match, Judgment Day 2005. Fresh off the coronation as the WWE Champion and the reveal of the Spinner WWE Championship. I'm going to say you're a straight up liar if you say you wouldn't like to see a spinning version of the classic ECW Championship. Something which I'm actually going to attempt to make a little mock-up for in my February design challenge as a little teaser there. But Cena gets so much blood in this match, and the visual at the end of the match would more than please the bloodthirsty ECW fans. And JBL, as the chicken shit heel at the end, says I quit, Cena still wipes him out, gets a massive pop from the crowd. Imagine how much bigger that pop would be if this match was inside the 2300 arena or the Hammerstein Ballroom and the big babyface just destroyed the big heel even though he quit. But yeah, number 3 on this list for this match, John Cena versus JBL, I Quit match, Judgment Day 2005. And number 3 on this list overall on this countdown, John Cena, specifically more so as the Doctor of Thugonomics. Number 2 on this list, and this will probably get some heat off wrestling purists and hardcore ECW fans, but at the end of the day, as I said, this is still my list, so come at me. Number 2 is The Miz. The Miz, well and truly proven time and time again, willing to do whatever it takes, both in and out of the ring, can run with literally anything he's given, and I could easily see Miz being the top heel, the number 1 heel in any era of ECW, all the way from Eastern Championship, all the way to Extreme Championship, but definitely in that hardcore, bloodthirsty era at its peak, I could see him doing a similar role to what Don Callis did as Cyrus the Virus, or maybe even like a Joel Gertner type character, or well. I feel like he could take a gimmick like that, turn it up to 1,000. He'd be as annoying as Bill Alfonso, but when it comes time to get extreme, he could back it up every time if necessary. And as I said, Fonzie had a very bloody match, but that was kind of like a one and done. I could see Miz doing it every now and again, wherever he needed to. But 3 matches that I think could fit Miz into ECW are versus Shane McMahon, Falls Count Anywhere match, WrestleMania 35. While not the most violent of these types of matches, these guys had a great story, took a couple of Joey Styles, oh my god, type bumps, and would definitely fit in with ECW. Again, that's The Miz versus Shane McMahon, Falls Count Anywhere, WrestleMania 35. Second match for The Miz that makes me think he fits this list, versus John Cena, I Quit match, Over the Edge 2011 for WWE. Much like the previous match, not the most violent of these match types, but again, for this era and what they were allowed to do, mixed with The Miz having Alex Riley, A-Rai, as his henchman at that time, gives me very strong Justin Credible and Lance Storm vibes, if I'm honest. Especially there's a spot where Riley's holding Cena back while Miz just wails on Cena with a kendo stick, which funnily enough is actually the thumbnail to this match on WWE's official YouTube channel, where they've actually got the match there as well for those that don't have Netflix. But yeah, match number 2, Miz versus John Cena, I Quit match, Over the Limit 2011. And the third match for The Miz versus Tommaso Ciampa, no DQ match, Raw, July 10th. That's my brother's birthday. Shout out to T-Dog. July 10th, 2023. This is a perfect example of what I'm talking about with Miz's character and a shit-eating heel and just being annoying. Because while he does get his licks in here and there on Tommaso Ciampa, the majority of this match is just him getting the shit kicked out of him by Tommaso Ciampa, who's the babyface in the situation. Fans are loving every second of it. Miz taking all these chaotic bumps. Right when it looks like Miz is done, he takes an air raid crash from the top rope through the table. Right when it looks like he's about to get his comeuppance, Bronson Reed comes out, takes out Tommaso Ciampa, revealed he's been paid off by The Miz. Miz steals the win even after the massive beating he takes, much to the chagrin of the WWE Universe. And again, if that was in the ECW arena, I could imagine them throwing trash into the ring at that aspect and at that result, and just, chef's kiss. Beautifully done. That match, last match for The Miz on the list, versus Tommaso Ciampa, no DQ match, Raw, July 10th, 2023. And again, number 2 on this list overall, The Miz. But number 1, I'm going to do another shitty version of a drum roll here. Number 1 on this list that I could see being in modern day ECW is Kevin Owens. And you'll notice that on the thumbnail for this, there's a graphic, which I made all the way back in April of 2024, when it was inspired, where all these, like, every year it happens almost, where on April Fool's Day it's like ECW returning, WCW returning, but someone posted a logo and I was like, hey man, can I use this? And they were like, yeah, go for it. But yeah, I made a little thumbnail in April of 2024 of a modern day ECW TV poster, And now I'm using it for this podcast here all the way in January of 2025 at the time of recording. And Kevin Owens is front and center on that graphic, and there's good reason. I don't think there's any wrestler in the last decade, dare I say the last 2 decades, that regardless of promotion, regardless of status, no matter how big or small, has shown the rebel and rogue extreme spirit of Extreme Championship Wrestling like Kevin Steen / Kevin Owens. And again, this may be where I am biased because I am a huge KO fan. He's in like my top all-time favorite wrestlers. But you cannot look at his body at work. And even if you're someone that's somehow not a fan of his work, because I know there's people out there that think he's trash and this and that and whatever, you cannot look at those matches and deny that there is very strong ECW vibes there. Although, if you are one of those people that think that his matches are trash, the fuck is wrong with you? Anyway, 3 matches that you should watch from Kevin Owens / Kevin Steen are versus El Generico, Ladder War, Ring of Honor, Final Battle 2012. Sometimes when you put the word war in a match, it doesn't necessarily deliver or it overhypes it, and all promotions, regardless of how big or small, are guilty of that. But this match here is insane, and that's all I can say about that. To top it off, actually takes place inside the Hammerstein Ballroom, and it was literally like watching a modern ECW event in 2012 there for Ring of Honor, and Kevin has obviously just gotten much, much better ever since then. Again, El Generico, Kevin Steen, I should say, Kevin Owens versus El Generico, aka Sami Zayn, spoiler alert, Ladder War, Ring of Honor, Final Battle 2012. The next match, versus Shane McMahon, Hell in a Cell match, Hell in a Cell 2017. Second Shane McMahon match on this list, on this episode, and fuck it, I'm going to say right now, Shane McMahon is now an honourable mention as well. I'll just throw it out at the wall and see if it sticks. But in all seriousness, this match, insane. I keep using that word. I've used it a few times in this episode, but only so many times I can use the word extreme and da-da-da. But it really is, like, the build-up to this feud is criminally underrated in itself. At one point in this feud, Kevin Owens actually attacks Vince McMahon himself, Shane McMahon's father, the boss of the company, blah, blah, blah. And this match, again, had so many Joey Styles, oh my God, moments that when I was watching live on pay-per-view, screamed holy shit 2, 3, 4 times while watching this match alone. And then to cap it off, this is actually the start of Sami Zayn's first heel run in WWE when he joined Kevin. Sami, all jokes aside, as I said, was El Generico. And, you know, before going to WWE and Steen versus Generico, or even just Sami and Kevin's story in WWE alone, those two, their relationship, their story, whether they're teaming, whether they're feuding, they very much give me Tommy Dreamer and Raven feud / storyline types of vibe. So yeah, the second match for Kevin Owens is versus Shane McMahon, Hell in a Cell match at Hell in a Cell 2017. And then the last match on this list, last match all up on this list, because Kevin Owens is number 1, versus Roman Reigns, last man standing match, Royal Rumble 2021. There's been a number of last man standing matches on this list, and cage matches too for that matter. But this match was in the Thunderdome era with no fans, just the visual pictures of the people watching at home. And yes, they had fake crowd noise edited in to kind of further the heels and faces, good guys, bad guys, respectively. But watching this match, I got so caught up in the action, and I know Novali said it as well, that we honestly forgot that there was no fans physically present. They brawled all the way through the backstage arena. There's a ridiculous bumps and bruises. At one point, Roman runs over KO with a golf cart, which I know has been done in other companies, and everyone's like, oh, be original, da-da-da. Shut the fuck up. They brawl all through the backstage. Again, great, oh my God moments. And considering this is a WWE style of sports entertainment, I could very much see this fitting in, whether it's WWE's version of ECW or the original ECW, which of course was the point of this list. I could see this match fitting in, which was Kevin Owens versus Roman Reigns, last man standing match at the Royal Rumble in 2021. And of course, number 1 on this list for me for top 10 wrestlers or top 10 acts since FTR as a tag teamer on this list. Number 1 on this list for me is Kevin Steen / more so Kevin Owens. I'm quickly going to rapid fire through both the honourable mentions and the actual top 10 again in succession, and then I'll jump into the plugs and everything else, and then make like a tree and get out of here. But honourable mentions: Darby Allin, Young Bucks, Brian Cage, Josh Alexander, Dirty Dominic Mysterio, Liv Morgan, Logan Paul, Black Taurus, CM Punk, Jordan Grace, Lucha Bros, Shane McMahon. While I'm thinking of it, maybe even throw Jake Paul in there with Logan Paul just to piss people off. And of course, on the thumbnail as well, you'll see other people like Shotzi Blackheart, Tiffany Stratton, and Joe Gacy, who was also mentioned in that match against Swerve Strickland with Ricky Shane Page. So throw Ricky Shane Page in there as well. And then, boop, counting down real fast from 10 to 1. Ricochet, FTR, Bronson Reed, Gunther, Will Ospreay, Rhea Ripley, Swerve Strickland, John Cena, specifically the Doctor of Thugonomics if we can, number 2, The Miz, and number 1 is Kevin Owens. Fight, kill, Steen, kill, whatever you want to say. I think Kevin Owens is the number 1 wrestler that would fit in the modern, number 1 modern era, number 1 modern wrestler in this era. My God, I'm going to leave all that in. That would fit into the 90s era of Extreme Championship Wrestling. And with that being said, the song of the week, Bodies by Drowning Pool. The match of the week, as I said, you should go watch all of these matches that I've talked about here in this episode. But if you just watch one, if you just want to do one, Terry Funk versus the Sandman versus Stevie Richards, ECW Barely Legal 1997. And of course, that leads straight into another match where the winner of this match faces Raven for the ECW Heavyweight title. But yeah, with that being said, check out all of the links. Check out my link tree. Even though she's not here, check out Nova Lee's link tree. You get all the podcast socials, the Patreon, where you can get early access for as low as Nova Lee likes to say, $5 dues. If you subscribed $10 and up, so it's $10 Australian, $10 Australian, $6 US. If you subscribe to the Essential tier and up, you get access to the digital copy of Book 1 in my little mini-series for young readers, learning the alphabet Smackdown. Call of the Wild is number 2. I'm working currently on War on the Water. Then number 3 will be Clash in the Clouds. That's a little exclusive. But Alphabet Smackdown, Call of the Wild, $10 Australian, $6 US and up. Second tier and up will get access to the link to the entire PDF for the 30-plus page digital copy for my book. I am still working very hard on book number 2, and eventually they'll be on Amazon and yada, yada, yada. But as I've said many times, they will all drop on the Patreon first, and then when the audio version is ready, it'll be for the $15 subscribers and up. Also with the $15 subscribers and up, when we do watch-alongs, like I did last episode, you get the footage. So you'll get to see myself and Nova react to this year's Royal Rumble. We've got a couple of other things in the pipeline wrestling related. I personally am going to do a watch-along to The Mean One, which is the Grinch horror film, and put it up there. And then the $20 subscription to the Patreon, the Supernova tier, will get you everything and anything and everything, but you'll also get shout-outs in the intro and outro of these episodes. And on top of that, I am looking at possibly trying to do, if we get enough subscribers, of course, Supernova tier exclusive giveaways here for the podcast, or something of that effect. So we're still working out the kinks, because obviously I've got to get subscribers to begin with. But yeah, with that being said, all the links are there. Pro Wrestling Tees, Amazon wishlist, the GoFundMe if you're feeling froggy. Follow me, Crossfire_graphics, Legally Blind graphic designer, but I'm really enjoying some of the work that I'm putting out lately. The month of February, I've created the February Fury Challenge. If you're a designer of any kind, please, I encourage you, I beg you to jump in and just have some fun with me. See what we can all come up with. Doesn't matter what style of art you prefer. There's going to be 10 different styles of art in my... I don't know the exact number, but there's going to be so many different styles of art when I do it. I don't know if they're all going to be good. That remains to be seen. But yeah, that's a thing that's happening. But if you are listening to this on February 28th, March 1st. A 2-night extravaganza in Geelong. MXW has WrestleFest 2. Former WWE superstar Brian Kendrick will be there. Link to those shows are below. Also on March 1st, in New South Wales, in Queanbeyan, right on the ACT border, so New South Wales ACT-ish. If you're in either of those areas, be listening. ECW, Extreme Capital Wrestling, will be Hard Day's Fight at the Queanbeyan Tigers Club. Tickets for that will be below as well. The following week, March 8th, Belconnen ACT ICW Insane Asylum 24. Tickets will be on sale for that. So far, we've got Rob Messenger versus Apex Anderson in an I Quit match, which I am very excited to call. It will be ridiculous. I cannot wait. And then all the way at the end of the year, for those in New South Wales, in Cowra, ICW Central West, the third Emma Butler Memorial Show. Tickets for that will be in the link below. Of course, I still do have Radiation Kick shirts here at the compound. $30 each, $10 goes to Emma's Tongue Cancer Charity. Obviously, if you buy one shirt online, it's an extra $10 shipping. And the more you go, like, so say you buy like 3 shirts, it'll be, $90 because they're $30 each. But you're only going to have to pay $15 for shipping rather than a ridiculous amount or whatever. But yada, yada, yada. So if you buy just one shirt, I'm technically losing money because I'm donating 10 to Emma's regardless, and it's usually $15 for shipping. But I'm saying just $10 shipping for one shirt because I'm a nice guy. Anyway, hit me up for all of that. I've got stickers and hats and 8x10s, and I think I've actually only got one hat remaining. So someone scoop that up. But yeah, obviously I'll take all that with me to Emma's show and raise some more money, yada, yada, yada. But that being said, those are my top 10. I'll go through the official top 10 once again, and then I'll wrap this up. So, number 10, we have Ricochet. Number 9, FTR. Number 8, Bronson Reed. Number 7, Gunther. Number 6, Will Ospreay. Number 5, Rhea Ripley. Number 4, Swerve Strickland. Number 3, John Cena. Number 2, The Miz. And number 1, Kevin Owens. That is my top 10. Let me know what you agree with, what you disagree with. Tell me what your list is. Tell me who your honourable mentions are. Keep an eye out for when I make a newer graphic with a different logo that someone else has also given me permission to use with the updated list. Obviously, it's not going to be all 10 people. Probably be like 4 or 5 people, but be like a little peek at this list. But yeah, hit me up. Let me know what you thought. Let me know what your list would be, etc., etc. This is actually going to be technically a bonus episode of sorts since it took me so long to put it together. It didn't come out in time. So it's actually, if you're listening to this on the day that it drops, it's Saturday the 18th of January. And then tomorrow on the 19th, a conversation that myself and Nova Lee had with Jake Gibson promoting Suplex Studios will also be on the feed. But again, if you have $5 for Patreon, you can get it 2 days early wherever possible. So both of these episodes, for example, will be up Friday, or Thursday night even, as I record this, but Thursday night, Friday morning, so not quite exactly 2 days for this episode, but yeah, the Jake Gibson episode, wherever possible, I try to do 2 days early is the point of that. But check out all the links, follow me, follow Nova, follow the podcast, of course, but yeah, just hit me out, let me know what your top 10 would be, and yeah, I am the Essential John L. Crossfire. You were just caught in conversation. Shaka-laka-laka, titty sprinkles, all that jazz. Let the bodies hit the floor. Let the bodies hit the floor.